And the bank information?
I do have that. Yeah.
Okay, well, cause Ruby don't know. She think you don't have that to do what you need to do with the website.
That's not the information I need. That's the PayPal sent some a little bit of cash, like 2 cents and 3 cents, to the account, and I need to know how much that was.
You just need to know the amount of the money that was added to the account?
Correct. It's only like 2 cents and 3 cents or something like that, but I need to know those amounts.
Well, we'll talk about it after the show, okay?
That's fine.
When are you leaving? When are you leaving on your deal?
I need to go to Branson on Friday night.
Okay, if I don't talk to you today, tomorrow, I'll talk to you Monday.
That'll be fine.
Okay. I'm not going to answer. Somebody's trying to call me. I'm not going to answer that.
Okay.
That would messing me up all the time. Okay. So I need to get out on it, right?
That's probably the best. Yeah.
Well, if I lose, you call me right back.
I will do.
Sure. Scott?
Yes, sir.
Okay, hold on. That was the councilwoman. Okay, hold on. Well, let me try it again. Okay, Scott, you there?
I am here, sir.
Okay, you got all the numbers right, Ira?
I'm calling them all right now.
Okay, you call them, or you got the councilwoman number too, right?
The councilwoman,
Rena Park Shaw.
right, I got Sheriff Barnes too.
I think that's 204. I gave you that number, didn't I? And you also got Cheryl Barnes' number, right? Okay, well, we're ready to roll, cause the councilwoman called me, want to know why she's been called. But go ahead and do your thing. And we'll open up, let's get them on the line, and I'll open up, and we'll go from there, okay?
Okay, she'll be the next call.
Okay.
Whenever you're ready to start, MC.
Well, do you want to wait for, you want to start now, we want to wait for them to get the people on the line?
Well, it's 5:04 right now.
Okay, I can start it while he gets the people on the line.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Okay.
5, 4, 3, 2. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. This is a two-part show because the same show, if you miss it, you'll be able to listen to it the following Saturday too on November the 6th. But this show is so important, not only to Kansas City residents and the Blue Hill residents, but Kansas City as a whole. But before we get into that, I like for Mr. R. folks to, instead of doing the remembrance and the other ones we do, let's do what you getting ready to make an announcement. You did it on your show. Make that announcement again about the first person who will be awarded the grant.
Yes, this afternoon on my radio program, Lunch with Congress, I was proud to announce that to Yuma, United Minority Business Media Association, our free scholarship to the Blockchain Academy for our chamber, and that Ruby Watson, she's a member of the organization, and I'm proud to announce that today on our media program, where we had the Blockchain Academy executive, Mr. Ryan Williams, and also Mr. Chuck DeVoe, executive vice president, executive director, I should say, of National Chamber of Commerce. We're very proud of her to be part of that program.
Well, that's a great thing. I know she's happy and she'll have all her friends tune in. We have the people. Who all do we have on the line? We have 3 people that'll be part of the show. And first, a lot of people want to know, how do they tell their people if they want to listen to the show? How do they inform their people that? How do the people listen? We're talking about Ferguson USA, HotTalkRadio.com, okay?
Well, if you listen to Ferguson USA, that's Ferguson USA, HotTalkRadio.com. You can be found down that number. And you can also be found us on Facebook and YouTube, as well as Twitch. And also, Scott has another way program being heard also. Scott, tell us about that.
Well, we're reaching out to different broadcast groups, like Carter Broadcast Group, to share our listening. So, Mr. MC, why don't you tell them a little bit about the Carter Broadcast Group?
Well, I will, but I think with the people online who's listening, I think we should open the lines to them. Who do we have,
You got Lamar, and you have the councilwoman, Miss Clark Shaw.
Do we have Michelle Burns yet?
No, MC, I was talking to you. No, I don't. No, she's next.
Okay, her number is,
I have it.
okay, let's get started. They had a very interesting meeting last week up at the Southeast Community Center, and we was very blessed to have the City Councilwoman, Rena Park-Shaw, I hope I got that right, and her husband, and then we had Mr. Lamar Vickers, who was the master of ceremony, and we had people like Linda Brown, who was head of the Blue Hills Neighborhood Association, and the importance of what's going on. And Ms. Bourne, a former president of the Blue Hills Neighborhood Association, if she hasn't joined us yet, she will soon join us. So let's go with Lamar and go with City Councilwoman, and they can get us started. And when the other person, we'll get them on the line, we can have, and if they want to go on YouTube or Facebook, they can text us. They might have a question. Is it right, Scott?
They could go on the Facebook or the YouTube or the Twitch and put in the chat box, and we'll find it.
Okay. Now, are we ready to go, Mr. Folks?
Yes, sir. We have Cheryl Bowens also.
Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is your show. This is a community internet that goes to 7 different countries via podcast. It goes to the stations here that Mrs. Scott just told us. But what we want to do is hear from you the importance of that meeting and what they might try to do in the 5th district, the 3rd district, but not limited to. We can either start with Lamar or the councilwoman or Cheryl Barnes. We want all of you to participate.
Well, I would start it off. First of all, I want to thank Councilwoman and Ms. Barnes for being on here with us. This redistricting is a very important issue to us here and statewide, but particularly here in our city. And we are very blessed to have them on here, and we're asking them to share with us the information that they have so that it could help us to be able to go forward and making the right moves and the right decisions. So with that, I would start it with our Councilwoman and thank her for being here.
Well, good evening, everybody. As you said, I'm Councilwoman Raina Park Shaw. Thank you very much for having me on tonight. I actually have sitting here next to me is the Director of Public Works for Kansas City, Mr. Michael Shaw as well, who was very instrumental in the discussion the other day. So he is joining me today as well. Definitely is very important from the local level on up to the national, federal level. We want to ensure that your listeners are aware of the importance of redistricting and the fact that they need to make sure their voices are heard as the district lines are drawn for the year. I'll go ahead and let Ms. Barnes introduce herself.
Thank you. My name is Cheryl Barnes, and I live in the Blue Hills neighborhood. I've lived here since 12, and I'm a member of the League of Women Voters, so I'm very interested in legal issues and voting and things that affect votes. And I'll turn it over to the next person.
Hi, so here to also talk about, redistricting, what that means in terms of purposes being delivered to residents, and just some general how redistricting, keep people engaged in the redistricting process, as well as engaged in re-elections.
For a person MC Richardson, as a person who might not know, this might be something they need to know. Could you kind of define the importance of this and what it is for our listeners who might not be up to par on what's going on and what is scheduled to take place in our community?
Yes, this is Councilwoman. So the city charter and just amongst we are supposed to establish or redraw district for faculty after the census is completed every 10 years. The first goal of the district is to provide quality in the political process. And the way this is done is through the rule of one person, one vote. Ultimately, to comply with that, the district lines are drawn based upon that count. So in Kansas City, we have grown to over 504,000 individuals. So with the growth in our city, we are needing to redraw those boundary lines and come up with about 85,000 or 50,000 individuals or residents per. So, ultimately, the importance of that, you hear terms of gerrymandering like that are just a concern. I'm sure Ms. Barnes probably can address some of that in her discussion. But ultimately, it is important to ensure that we draw the lines in a fair, equitable manner to ensure the voice of one of those individuals can be represented within City Hall.
Ms. Barnes?
Yes, thank you. I didn't want to step on anybody. I'm not worried so much about gerrymandering with the city districts. I think that will be more of an issue with the state legislature, based on especially what Illinois is doing, where there is one party, and they said since we're in power, we're going to draw the districts so that we're elected for the next 10 years. That's not one person, one vote. It is, in fact, making other people's votes worthless. In the city of Kansas City, I think that we are all close enough to the process that we'll be able to, as the councilwoman said, be involved, keep an eye on what's going on, and share our concerns. the district boundaries may make some kind of a difference. I would certainly hate to lose any of the council people that we have now. But Lee Barnes, for instance, will be turned out this next election. So it'll be interesting to know who is going to run for that seat, whatever those boundaries are. So
well, Ms. Barnes, while you're there, will you tell the people who don't know what gerrymandering means? And this redistricting has come about every 10 years from the census. A lot of people won't even participate. They don't know how important that is. We need to make them aware of how important this issue and this show we're doing today.
Yeah, thank you. Gerrymandering is where the politicians draw the districts in a way that either cracks or packs different areas. For instance, Kansas City is known as a Democratic city, as is St. Louis. So one of the ways to minimize the number of Democrats, there are two things politicians could do. One is pack all the Democrats in one area so they get one representative. And another way to change the votes is to crack that demographic. So they might splinter Kansas City so that a Republican could easily get elected. And so it would be difficult for us as urban dwellers to get anything done in Jefferson City.
Okay, this is our folks, okay? Ms. Barnes, I need a clarification, okay? In the redistricting, I think you're talking about on the federal level, okay, that deal with our congressional representatives, and we also have one that deals with our state representatives and senators, and then one with our local people like the councilwoman. So you're talking right now, if I understand you right, about our federal seats, which includes Cody Bush here in St. Louis and the Reverend Cleveland Canty, am I right? On the federal level.
Well, both federal and state, because
right now you talk about how the district can be drawn up now on the federal people first, so that's what you're talking about now.
Yes.
Okay.
So if the federal, somebody has said that they put a bullseye on Reverend Cleaver's district, and so they want to change the boundaries again to make it more difficult to get a Democrat elected and have someone with a concern for the urban areas in Congress. Here in Kansas City, I don't think it will be such an issue. Our council members are just fabulous. And they're approachable, they understand our issues. When Councilwoman Park Shaw was elected, one of the things she did was come walk around the Blue Hills neighborhood and ask about what the problems were. She just introduced, and she could speak to this too, and I hope she will, introduced an ordinance so we would have more trash pickup, because that's one of the big issues we have here. I think no matter where the boundaries are, what they do to us in terms of redistricting, and if we're called District 3 or District 5 or, District whatever, I think that our council members will be very responsive to us, as they have been in the past.
If I could jump in here for a second, this is Councilwoman Reno Parkshaw. Just thank you for that, Cheryl. Just want to say on the local level, one of the things that we do need to make sure that we are mindful of is the Voting Rights Act and implication, and ensuring that as we redistrict in Kansas City, that we do not marginalize the black vote. And so the redistricting commission required to ensure that we have a high enough percentage of African American minorities and minority populations to ensure that we can continue to have an ability to elect an African American person to represent those districts. So that would be indicative of the third and the fifth district. And so just an example of why that is important is there has been some individuals that are advocating to extend my district far south, and and there comes a point where when we go far south, depending on where those lines are drawn, we could minimize that the African American voters down to like 23% was the number. And so while we know that we go south, we need to be diligent about where we stop, how far south we go, because the further south we go in King City, the less African Americans there are. And so, ultimately that is important. And it's just as important as if the third district was to go north, we could run into similar issues. And while we don't necessarily worry as much about gerrymandering and the implications behind that as we do on the state and federal level, on the local level, we want to ensure that we don't neutralize the vote of the African American population, which is why we typically have the 3rd and the 5th districts are typically African Americans who represent those districts, because that's where the highest percentages are. So our goal is to try to get close to 60% African Americans in the 3rd and the 5th district to ensure that we that we can maintain that and are mindful of the Voting Rights Act implications.
On that same note, we're talking to top people who are guests, but the same thing could apply to the Ferguson, St. Louis area, the aldermen and what have you. Can you kind of bring us up to date on that, Mr. Folks?
Yes. In St. Louis City, the boundaries will not change for the city. As far as Congressman Bush is concerned, because he pretty much will maintain a nice voting block and going to the north, which is in St. Louis County where Ferguson is located, and we have a whole lot of municipalities in North County that pretty much all black. And so Ferguson, the mayor is Mayor Jones, and so they will stay intact, and so will Mayor Fountain. And we have a whole lot of northern black cities that have black mayors. So that's why Corey Bush is not being targeted, as the councilwoman said in Kansas City, where you have where the district there can be extended, but none of the districts in St. Louis, the wards, as you say, in St. Louis, will be affected, by redistricting for the congressional seat.
Comments from anybody? Questions? Let's add to it. Let's don't have any, what they say, no talking. This is what this show is for people to express, orientate, educate our listeners' audience. And we have audience, like they said, from all over. Even from 7 countries, even Facebook, YouTube, Apple TV, smartphone, iPhone, and the other brand new members that Scott has stated earlier. He could restate them for the benefit of the people who might have just tuned in.
Just a second here. Yes, we're on Twitch, Facebook, YouTube, all under the Ferguson USA Hot Talk Radio banner. The Ferguson USA Hot Talk Radio.com we broadcast to, and we're working on getting simulcasting to some broadcasting companies.
That's a good deal. That's KPRS, Kansas City Wise, that we're working on something to do simul broadcasting, and we hope to have that started in the very near future.
And then I was just as Councilwoman, would like to make sure that the listeners are aware that the City Redistricting Commission is having 2 community meetings coming up. One on November the 6th from noon to 2 o'clock. That's next Saturday at the Baptist Center at 54-103rd Street. Again, that's November 6th from noon to 2 o'clock, and as well as November the 8th from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Red Clyde Center, which is at 1600 East 17th Terrace. Again, November the 6th to 8th. That information can be found on the city's website, mo.gov. Just want to make sure that everybody knows this is an opportunity for you to come out, learn more information, and also the voice about what's important as the city as redistricting.
MC, if I could, I would like to say,
Identify yourself, sir.
I'm sorry, this is Lamar Vickers with the KCOG, and our request is we would like to see a map that would be of benefit to that 3rd and 5th district. We believe that if we can come up with a map that we would like to present to them and to ask of them to consider that map, and then whatever boundaries and whatever it took to make that happen, that's what we would like to see.
Now, once again, straight, what would be the procedure in getting the people, and who would draw up this map?
So the mayor appointed Councilman Parkshaw. The mayor appointed a commission on September 8th. It comprises of 9 community members that are located throughout the area. They have been meeting since September the 8th. Those meetings proceed on Wednesday from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. You can go to kcmo.gov to see the recorded meetings. You can also join via Zoom or go to City Hall every Wednesday and you can see the master talk discussion. Well, all of that is on the NBC 2 channel. If you want to look at past meetings or live meetings on YouTube. So, and I'll just say for the purpose of your listeners, the representative for is Dr. Kokeep Hill, who is the CEO of Black, is also a former 5th District Councilwoman. 3rd District representative is Clint Ashton. He's an attorney out of law.
Councilwoman Parkshaw, do you have great faith in those city representatives that are working on redistricting?
I do, and it's chaired by Smith. She's the 1st District resident. She's at large. But the reason why I feel very good about the work that we're doing is we have their priority to engage in the community. So they have so far 3 engagement sessions. I just mentioned 2 other engagement sessions, and they have on this website a feedback form where individuals can offer their comments about what's important to them. And before they start their meeting, they actually, or when they start their meeting, actually read the comments from the feedback form so that they can take consideration as they start playing with the maps or manipulating the maps. So I just feel that they are engaged in listening to the residents that call it, that either come in to those sessions or write their form. And ultimately, they talked about the different priorities that have been mentioned, and why if anyone feels strongly either way about how they want their drawn, they need to be present at those meetings or at least submit the information on the form because it does make a difference. It matters.
Also, Councilwoman, if your husband is not with us, what is his purpose and what is the importance of his office?
Yes,
Oh, you all with us. Thank you, sir.
yes. So my office is, I'm by basic services, repair and replace basic the infrastructure in Kansas City. But I want to just say that the main goal or the main thing I really want to encourage residents to do is be engaged, right? To participate in the process, let your voice be heard. I've been in providing services over 20 plus years. I know how important neighborhoods are and how important the neighborhood and see some of the impact when they're divided by council, the impacts that they have to the neighborhood are existing over the last 30, 40 years. You can see that occurred in the 50s. And, these maps, some of the earth shows that lack of investment in those communities. And I just want to reach out to our communities that, we need to get engaged involved with heard, to the extent that, one of the bars and Blue Hills as Blue Hills, we talk about prominent African currently exists very small. However, map split that neighborhood in different districts, and so understanding that is a very strong, thriving development, and for it to be in different groups could create some in terms of how those districts or to those and then more importantly, one of the things that that community is very engaged, how that community broke up in terms of voting. And the councilwoman talked a little bit about protecting votes kind of thing. That district, that area, is one of the largest, strongest black voting population in the city, and by splitting that way, splitting the votes of one of the strongest black voting blocks. So that's just something to consider. I think it's a big deal goes on its face, but it has broader range of implications to represent them, to represent that community locally, as well. Got to be cautious of what that means on the state level, and as Mark talked about gerrymandering. That those are very important. And getting engaged is very, very, very important. Let your voice be heard. Table is definitely up.
Okay, I'd like to just interject and back in the day, when the community peoples where Mr. Vicker come to play with his group KCOG, is that unless you were a registered voter, you could not get the city council person of your district to come out. But that was back in the day where they needed 25. I know it's a little different because our present city council people, they come out and they work within the neighborhood. So I think Lamar, you can probably talk about this because you were engaged, very deeply engaged in working with various community groups.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Lamar Vickers, KCOG. And that's exactly what we are doing at this point, is getting in touch with other organizations and trying to help spread the word that this is something that everybody must get engaged in. As Michael said earlier, if we don't get engaged in it, then when we look up and they render the decision, and now we sitting there talking about woe is me, it's not woe is me, it's why is me. Why is me not getting up and getting involved? And again, our effort throughout this day, our goal is to be able to find someone with the ability to present a map. They ask for our feedback. They ask for and I believe, like the councilwoman said, they genuine when they're acting. I really felt some genuine individuals up there who really wanted to do right. But we can't rely on them to do that. We need to take it upon ourselves and present to them our version of what we would like to see. And I just say this, particularly the 3rd and the 5th. Just like how they are looking out for the 4th and the 6th, we need to look out for the 3rd and the 5th. And we here to say to this group today, let's put a 3rd and 5th map that we want to see, and we as an organization, the KCOGs, are ready to represent that to them and to say this is what we want and how do we get it.
If you just tune in, you listen to a special broadcast for Guess Who's Coming to Kansas City. MC Richardson is the moderator and the host. But I want to go back to the councilwoman, that not only what she and her counterpart does, Lee Barnes, but the importance of having an adequate staff. Because in most cases, for a politician, it's the staff that does most of the research and the work, and they bring it back to the person who is elected. Is that right, Councilwoman?
Yes, that is correct. We have a legislative agency that our offices, they play a very critical role in ensuring that constituent services is on par. They work with many of the residents of the neighborhood, problem solving, creating great solutions to different neighborhoods. And so I say personally, my office couldn't run without my legislative aid. I say, of course, I'm without a legislative aid, so I guess my office is running. But, play a vital role in making sure that the residents receive the services that they need. Definitely the city staff, is full of public services who have been doing this for many years. One of them working for the city for over 20 years, running our solid waste department, and now, of course, doing public work, overseeing, the streets, roads, all of that. So I have to go off to the city staff, our legislative that make things run in our community.
Okay, another question. I said back in the day that it is required to have most organizations, they need at least 25 registered voters for the elected official to come out to their meeting. Now that doesn't hold true now, I hope. And also, Cheryl Barnes, it's just like you work very closely with the city council and also the League of Women Voters. What's your view and thought on this?
I think it would be a great opportunity to register voters, and the League of Women Voters would be happy to get a volunteer there to help register voters. It's so important. And it's anything we can do to get people involved in the electoral process. It's absolutely critical for the success of our neighborhoods, in our city, in our state, in the country, in fact.
When you speak of getting people registered, that's one part of it, getting them registered. But the most important part is getting them to vote. Now, I know Vickers, his group, they're getting people registered. How do they get registered? What is the procedure now and process?
Are you asking Mr. Vickers or me?
It doesn't matter.
That would be for you.
Okay. We work very closely with the Board of Elections. We take classes every year, and we have refreshers for those who have been through the training before. We let the Board of Elections know where we're planning to register voters, and then we take cards and have the unregistered voters show us identification and register to vote. And then we turn the cards into the Board of Elections, and they add those newly registered people to the voter rolls. somebody moves, they need to re-register, so they'll have their correct address in the records. It's fairly easy, fairly straightforward, but we take it very seriously. We have maybe 60 women and men who are involved in registering voters. So if somebody calls and says they're having an event and they would like to register voters, and we can do it, we will be there. We recently, I'm not involved with that committee, but the voter registration group recently registered, I think, over 50 people, new immigrants who had just become U.S. citizens. It's really a heartwarming and moving experience.
Not to leave out our other listeners, we have a lot of listeners in the St. Louis Ferguson area, and we can tell one of our listeners is barking, but on the same token, does that hold true in Ferguson and St. Louis, Mr. Folks?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's my dog, Mr. Parker. I was outside, she rang the doorbell, and that creates some confusion here. But yes, it's the same, the whole true, okay, anywhere in the States, we have the same rules, okay, that require things that you need to, for you to be able to vote and stuff. And right now, you need to have your IDs and stuff like that. And it's very important that we all get together right now and get this done. Or as someone said, for the next 10 years, okay, these dollars will be locked in. And so that means these officers will be next will be there for the next 10 years. So it's very important that you come out right now and with this part of your duty, as a matter of fact, is being a part of this. Not just voting, but being a part of joining the district and make sure your representative that you have, like the councilwoman, and make sure she's safe in her district and make sure Congressman Cleveland is safe in this district. It's very important, as Cheryl said earlier on, they're trying to send us a bullseye on Congressman Cleveland's back. Take my word, but that's a true statement, okay? We'd love to have him removed from Congress because he's a very, very powerful man in Washington, D.C. right now. And we'd love to have him, removed from that seat.
I just want the councilwoman, maybe the smallest city, second largest city, St. Louis, but we did very good in the census. Kansas City did. Not everybody participated, but we did well. A lot of people just don't understand the importance of the census. And Councilwoman, we was on the show, we had you on the show, and could you kind of, because you play a pertinent role, I guess your husband really happy to have you because you're such a significant person in his life and the city. I thought I'd throw that out.
Well, I sure appreciate you throwing that out, especially with census right here. But yes, census actually plays a significant role, and I'll just kind of give an example. As we were, and one of the reasons why I'm working so hard, I'm not on doors to try to help get people to do the census as well with Mayor Quentin Lucas. But one of the reasons why is the candidates really need to display for being counted because at that time Kansas City had under 500,000 residents as our population. We could prove with more, but we couldn't prove it without the census. And so as the federal government was to allocate dollars into our city, into this region, because we had less than 500,000 residents at the time in that census, then the money that would have come to Kansas City actually had to go to the county. And the county dispersed the dollars throughout the different cities within that county. So our dollars went to Jackson County, actually, because Kansas City is over 4 counties. So our dollars went to all 4 of those different counties. And then ultimately, what it did is that the county decided how much money they were going to allocate to the Kansas City residents. And when our department, our staff, our finance calculated that there was a return that Kansas City more dollars than we received. Had we had over 5,000 residents, that money would have come directly to Kansas City. Well, now we are over that number, so now we still 508,000 residents that at least were counted in Kansas City. Because we know everybody participates in that process, I believe our number is a lot bigger than that, but that is what is counted. So now, as dollars are being allocated throughout our community just in the future, those populations that have the biggest count will receive the most money, which is why I worked really hard in my district to make sure we were counted, because if there's any money that's supposed to come to us, I want us to get it because we need it. So, that I think it's kind of a never-ending circle in that, the census leads into the redistricting leads into the representation, how we are represented, and who represents us. So being engaged in the process, not just voting, not just, but also engaging with the elected officials that represent us is very important, because ultimately that determines representation, and representation is very important.
Well, Councilwoman, I commend you, on the work that you did in the census. Here in St. Louis, we tend to turn out late, and as we all know, that President Trump cut the census short by 30 days. And so we dropped in the number that you guys went up, which I commend you guys on that, because people need to know that in Washington, D.C., all our tax money is cut up every year, and it goes to the representatives, based on those census numbers. And the fact that you guys went over 500,000 committee on that means you're much lower in the city now and have a higher ranking. So commend you on that. You've done a great job. Well done.
Thank you. It was me not telling a lot of good words, and
Identify yourself, please, in case somebody just tuned in.
sorry. Thank you. This is Councilwoman Parkshaw. Mayor Quinn Lucas and I knocked on quite a few doors and had census takers with us doing census, taking information right on the spot if they were willing to do that. But I'm happy that we were able to show that we're at 508,000, which we could have gotten before, but we didn't get to it.
Well, our former mayor wasn't as active as you guys were, and so we're now paying that price. So again, and people need to understand that again, Congressman Cleaver sits in D.C. on he shares under all the money that goes to the housing department. And that's why they would like to get him out of D.C. So that's why you got to make sure, that and fight, very much for him, because he's doing a great job, and will continue to do a great job. And he also is on other committees, but right now he's a leader in Washington D.C. because of his seniority, and we want to make sure that he stays there.
That's right. We definitely lives in this district, my district, city council district, and also, was my pastor before he moved into Congress. So definitely, he works hard for this district.
Yes, he does.
Okay, go ahead.
That's why this Lamar with KCRG. And again, as I said, I'll echo this all night. First, I'd like to say, along with the voter registration, our goal is to do voter motivation. Because not only do we have to get people registered, but we also have to get the registered voters that are registered to vote motivated to vote. And so we need to start now so that when April comes around, they are all in the mindset of being ready and prepared to vote. And if we can start getting the people who are already empowered with the ability to vote to utilize their God-given rights that they have obtained, then that's going to be very instrumental in going forward with that process.
Lamar, I want to jump in here on that. This is Cheryl Barnes. We are concerned about the way the different states are making it more difficult for people to vote. In Georgia, they closed down a lot of the polling places that were out in the rural areas, making it difficult for those African American voters to vote. Councilwoman Park Shaw mentioned earlier the Voting Rights Act. It was there's a new one. The other one, the Supreme Court gutted, and so now there's a new one that's pending in Congress, and that would supersede all of these state laws that make it difficult for people to vote. There'd be early voting. Some states have registration the day of the election, and I'm not sure all the provisions. Maybe the councilwoman can address that. But there's the federal legislation, but also in Missouri, we need to keep an eye on those folks and keep pressure on Jefferson City so they don't make it more difficult for us to vote.
Well, this is our folks here. You're right about that, okay? Because our governor and the legislator right now is very much anti-St. Louis and anti-Kansas City. And they're doing all the things they can now, or even holding back, the rights for 10,000 people who couldn't get medical treatment because they refused to put money in the budget, okay, as they've been voted on a couple of times. So right now, you must be very clear right now. If you can, please look out who you can put in the state. You can Jeff City. That's very important. Just as many Democrats or blacks, too, if you can, to Jefferson City to be your voice there. Because right now, the Republicans outnumber the Democrats by vast, and they have control of the Senate, the House, and the governor's mansion.
I would also, Michael Shaw here again. I would just continue to add about, your voice does count. We've seen elections won by 1 or 2 votes, less than 100 votes, whatever the case may be. So everyone registered to vote, should vote. There are things that you also talk about. We Missouri passed the Clean Missouri Bill. Talked about how elections would receive their funds. Talked about the Clean Missouri, and it didn't take. That was voted by Democrats and Republicans alike, and then it didn't take for the state to come up with some other position to eliminate what the people asked for. We've seen that also in the motor fuel tax. The state put out a request to increase the state's motor fuel tax. It was not voted for the state, and now they increase motor fuel tax in the next 5 years, and you can refund on those taxes to some things that most up to and make that. Where has the education been that unregistered motor fuel can actually begin earning rebates back on the increased motor fuel tax? So this is why it's very, very, very important to vote. It's very important that we are very conscious about gerrymandering, because even though the Republican states, Kansas City and Columbia are Democratic cities that carry a lot of population. So why is that? Why also think about the national elections? The states have the ability to split your vote, vote. When we talk about the electoral votes here in the state of Missouri, some states split electoral votes. In Missouri, we give all the votes to one candidate versus splitting them. So that's an important thing, because split our votes for there could have been other presidents who won the election, such as Hillary Clinton, had a state or two all in one, when, although, President Trump won the vote in the state, voted in the state. So, that's how president's election overall, electoral college college. However, schools have less votes than anyone in the country, but still win the election. So getting out and voting is very, very important. I can't underline or understate how important it is to register to vote and get out and that's our number one charge amongst all of these activist groups and, that we're out here encouraging people to the poll. Regardless of the outcome, at least vote.
Like once again, every week, it comes that time that we're about to end our show, but I want to thank everyone, but also the United Minority Media Association held a successful 2021 Hall of Fame inductee, where 10 people was inducted into the Yuma Hall of Fame. But this show, we think, is so tremendous that will be repeated next Saturday. And also, we're getting ready to get into November, which is our Yuma special acknowledge of American Indian Month. And before we close our individual, how you can be reached, and if you need volunteer, in the next few minutes is the time for you to make our audience aware who you are and how you can be reached. That could be email, that could be phone number, and how important each and every one of them can be.
I'll start that process. Mark Vickers, KCOG. We are, okay, our phone number is 816-715-2964. We have a town hall meeting regarding redistricting November the 17th at Southeast Community Center. And we can utilize that number for anyone that needs COVID relief.
And Councilwoman Raina Park Shaw, I can reach the council office at 816-513-6521, 816-513-6521. Thank you so much for inviting me up today, and thank you for the work that you're doing to educate your.
And this is
of course, so that can hold us 3-1. You see something about 3-1.
this is Cheryl Barnes, and you can get a hold of the League of Women Voters on their website, lwvkc.org.
Ira folks, you can reach me at Ira folks, IRA_WLKS@yahoo.com.
And this is MC Richardson, Chairman and CEO and founder of the United Minority Media Association, and we are recruiting members. And our website is Yuma HQKC1.org, and the number is 816-822-8866. And Scott, you won't be with us this following week, so we started to shut down the show, but since it's so important, we're going to repeat this show next Saturday. Thank you very much.
No problem. Have a good night.
Life is good. Everybody be safe.
Hey, thanks. Okay, go ahead.